guys, it's Rachel with Porter Valley Ranch, and we're here to do our first summer garden tour. I'm super excited that we are to a stage that we can kind of show you what's going on. We've leaked garden information in some of our other videos. You know we've been working on a potager, you know I worked with a garden coach, and I'm excited to show you today what all is in each bed and how far it's come. We're going to start with the raised beds. Over here, Josh made these beds out of barn metal and wood. This is something we're trying to use throughout our pool area and our barn. We like to mix the wood with the barn metal. Plus, it saves a lot of money to build your flower bed out of that instead of all lumber, especially now. We've filled the whole bottom of the bed, probably till about right here, with bedding that we have pulled out of the sheep pens and leaves and a bunch of good organic filler, and then we brought in good garden topsoil for the whole last 6 inches, maybe about 6 to 10 inches on top, and then we started planting. If you watched my seed video, you know that my friend Caroline and I started seeds indoors this year, and everything you're gonna see today was from that project. So I'm super excited to know everything I've done is from seed that I started. We've got peppers happening here. We've got the front area is going to be all of the beans. So all summer long your beans are going to grow really well, and I put them in the front row of both of the beds so that when the cucumbers and tomatoes trellis up the back, they provide a little bit of shade for those beans to grow in front. So all of these beds are going to have beans and tall trellising cucumbers, tomatoes, and zucchinis. And then we've got some peppers mixed in, and because it's a potager garden, one thing that you're allowed to do is to make everything ornamental, so it's a little prettier than just like a market garden or something that's just yielding vegetables. So it's going to have a high yield, but it's also going to have your pollinators in there, and it's going to look really pretty too. One of my favorite parts of this garden is the focal point right here being the trellis. So Josh took some cattle panel and just stapled it in on both sides, one big lean, and I've got midnight cherry tomatoes growing. So any kind of like cherry tomato that's gonna vine is supposed to reach up and all the way over. And then over here we just have some noodle beans. So noodle beans are gonna trellis, but then they're gonna hang and they're gonna be pretty long. So I can't wait to see this area when both sides grow up all the way, and it creates that shade for this little bench, which can focus on the center of the garden. This bed is kind of more of the same for the cucumbers and the tomatoes and the squash. We've got both things growing. I have more peppers in this one, and then we also have the loofah gourds that I've seen a lot of people grow. I've never had experience with that, but we were successful from seed, so I put them in to see how they're gonna do. The borders of both beds are going to be asparagus. So that's a 2-year crop. We're not going to get anything from it for a couple years, but one thing that's going to be great is once it's done yielding its harvest, it will grow like a big pretty bush on the sides. So it'll look nice, and it will start providing those asparagus that we love to eat. Right now I'm seeing what is getting fertilized and what's not. Whenever you have your squash that looks like this, kind of shriveled up at the end, that means that when this flower was vibrant and ready to be fertilized, it didn't happen. That can be a problem with bees, or it can be, I think I've got everything pretty crowded in here, so what I've got to do is prune and open up the space for bees to find it. But then another thing a lot of gardeners do, myself included, is we take the male flower. Right here, you can see the stamen here with all the pollen on it. I'm going to rob it a little bit, but you can see how that goes. Whenever you find one of those and you see a female flower with a fruit on the back side of it, you can actually dip it in there to hand pollinate it and do the bee's job for them. So that's something that you've got to be committed to do each morning, and to see which ones are open and which ones are ready to be pollinated, and that will ensure that you're going to grow fruit like this one back here. If you don't get to it in time, if the bee doesn't get to it in time, this is what happens. Moving into the in-ground beds, you're gonna notice the border first. Josh actually chopped down these trees and brought them in, hauled them in full-on Paul Bunyan style. I was gonna go something easy like a black little landscaping border or some rocks, and he went extra on me, and I love it. So we brought these in, and then we rebar staked them down so that you can see everything's kind of at a slant, but we want to make sure those borders stay intact. These are our L-shaped beds, and at each bed corner I went ahead and did a boxwood to kind of define the space. This is going to be just a boxwood gem, just a small one. It's not going to get to 4 feet, but during the winter it'll be evergreen. It'll kind of create that boundary. Lavender is something that I love. I try to put everywhere. It's good for repelling bugs. It's beautiful and it smells great, and it's a perennial. So each bed I tried to put some in there. The goats got to this one before we completely got everything shut off, so I'll be adding that back. But my goal here was to create a strawberry patch here and a strawberry patch there. So for the most part, that's another thing. Fruit's always going to take a couple years to get a good crop. So that's something I know that we're growing this year, not really harvesting, but that's something I want to get going because it is perennial. It'll come back in the same space every year. I did add in some pepper plants because I know that it won't take over this entire space this year. So I don't know that I'll be able to do that next year. Hopefully it will just be a strawberry patch, but for this year I knew we could get some more stuff in, so let's go for it. On these two L-shaped beds, I decided to go a little bit more ornamental with the flowers. I've never done dahlias before, but I planted the bulbs down in here. I tried to line everything with zinnias, and then I ended up coming back and adding a few pepper plants in there too. So I originally thought I'd have a pepper patch, and we didn't make that happen, so I went ahead and put them in beds that I knew weren't going to be full, and I honestly didn't track it very well, so it's going to be super fun to figure out which pepper's growing where when they start to bloom. Okay, these two are my bigger patches, is what I call them. This is the pumpkin patch, and as you can see, I actually had really great germination rate with these pumpkin seeds. We made a video last fall how we collected them from my friend who brought them over. So there's gray pumpkins, there's fairy tale pumpkins, there's white pumpkins. They're really pretty pumpkins, and we saved all those seeds, and these did great. So I'm actually going to need to come in and dig up a couple of seedlings every feet and give those away because I wasn't sure what to expect with germination, and they really, really popped. So we're super excited about that, and I can't wait to have pumpkins in the fall that I grew myself. This is the melon patch, and it is watermelons and cantaloupes, and then I backed it with sunflower seeds. If you saw this last year, we had some awesome giant sunflowers down by our garden outside of the kitchen, and we saved seed from those, and I planted those again. They're getting eaten up by the grasshoppers, which is my biggest rival at the moment, but I think they're going to come up and they're going to be gorgeous, and we'll be able to save seeds from that again. I wish we had germinated better throughout here with the melons, so I'll do another round of seeding right through the middle, but I think these are going to go pretty well, so I'm excited to see how well they do in this patch. I threw in an extra tomato plant because I had one, so we're going to see how this does. I need to prune it and get a cage on it, but I obviously outgrew my space on the beds, so we threw this one down here just to see how it does on an in-ground bed as opposed to a raised bed. The focal point of the potager is this center herb garden. And one thing that the garden coach advised me on, Robin, she said to do Mediterranean herbs, which I happen to like the best anyway. So we put this in here and it has gone awesome. I had to do some extra cactus mix and peat moss so that it would drain better, because if you can tell, it's just dirt in here. You don't want it to turn into like a soupy mud puddle. So the drainage in that has actually worked pretty well. I found this just driving down the streets in Sapulpa in one of the resale shops and was super excited. I knew the second I saw it that I really wanted it for the garden. My vision was to have like a string of pearls or something growing out and over. That hasn't happened, so hopefully with the next garden video I will have made a hit on that instead of a flop on that, but right now in June it's a flop, so we'll get that figured out. These right here, this is your rosemary, basil, dill, oregano, which oregano should be very pretty. It should spill out the sides, so that should be coming. My cilantro has bolted and turned into coriander, so it needs a little bit of support, but it's still going, and hopefully reseeding for the future. And then this is kind of an extra random piece. This is Russian kale. This was something we started from seed. I know there's not a lot of lettuces you can grow at this time in summer, but I knew this one could, so I wanted to see how it would do. So I threw it in the herb garden, and it's actually doing really well. It's time to harvest a bunch of that, put it in smoothies. It'll be awesome. Down here are blackberries and blueberries. When I bought these, I didn't grow these from seed. So when I bought these, I was looking for a container-friendly, self-pollinating bush. These are not 2 years old. Usually a 2-year-old one will go ahead and produce a lot in that summer, so I don't expect much from this year. But one thing I didn't want to have to do was buy multiple varieties of blueberries or blackberries that would have to cross-pollinate with each other. I wanted to see how they would do, and I didn't think I had room to put them in an in-ground bed, so I wanted to do a container. Another reason for a container is I can move them into the hoop house that we hope to have over the winter and see how they do there. So hopefully it'll be something that grows and continues to yield fruit for years, but the way I started out was a container-friendly, self-pollinating bush. Okay, and that brings us all the way back over here to our last row of in-ground beds. Right here I did some onion starts, and I've got those growing in rows. Something has happened. I'm not sure if it's a sunlight issue or a bunny rabbit issue. Not that I think they would eat onions, but these 2 rows are not successful at all. These look good. I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking for and when I'm gonna know to pull them, but I know it's not time now. I know on the planting schedule it's not close. Although it's super tempting to try to dig in and see how they're actually doing. So I am known to do that. Right here I went ahead and did sweet potato. I didn't start from a slip, I started from a plant. I didn't do a ton of research on this, so I'm just kind of waiting to see if it's like a surprise blessing or something that luckily works out. But I do know your soil needs to be around that like 80-degree weather before that goes in. So I'm hoping I got the timing right on that, because there's just not a lot that you can add to the garden right now. So because this side of the bed didn't work out, that was the one thing I thought, let's just see if it happens. This bed right here, I direct sowed okra. I had a couple of seedlings that I had grown in the seed room, but I don't see a difference really. I don't think that they've grown any different than the ones that were directly sown. I'm also a little bit disappointed with where the okra plants are right now, so that's something else that I'm gonna have to fertilize and try to beef up, because for some reason it's just not going too well. A new surprise that I did this year was edamame. It's a soybean. My family eats it all the time. The boys love it. I can throw it with any meal and they'll eat it. I often do it as like a little appetizer while I'm cooking, so that they're eating something healthy like a side dish before the dinner. But I thought if we could grow our own, because at our old house we did actually grow our own and it was super successful. But this one is kind of lacking. As with a lot of things in the garden, just because we haven't gotten a lot of sun yet this summer. But there are some that seem to be doing well, but then there are some major duds as well. Something ate these 2. So I'm on the hunt, but I'm pretty sure it's the rabbit. And our last bed is a new grow for me. It's gonna be corn. I direct sowed the corn, and that's something that I don't think there's any point in starting it in the seed room, because your soil's gotta be warm. So just go ahead and start it whenever you can directly in there. Woo! And the back side's just gonna be a golden sweet corn, and then this is one of the varieties that has a lot of colors in it. You might notice that even though these are 2 different types of corn, they're both doing the same thing. This half of the bed is not very successful. This half looks a lot better. I'm even gonna have to go back in and thin again on that side of the corn. The only thing I can figure is that this tree is hitting it in the morning, this tree is hitting it in the afternoon. So we're gonna trim some branches and see if that kind of opens it up and this side gets as much sun as that, because this side is definitely doing better, and that makes the most sense to me. And our last area of the garden is a fruit tree. So this is a pink lady apple tree, and I'm actually looking for a gala tree because it does have to cross-pollinate. So we've planted some bulbs with some flowers here, and I plan to do the same thing over here, and then hopefully these will both have enough light to grow, enough space to grow, and then they'll eventually cross-pollinate with each other. So that's where the garden is in June. I'm super pleased and very excited that it has made so much progress, and I know that I fast-forwarded years of planning and knowing what to do by using Robin as my garden coach. So I'm going to link to her below, but she's phenomenal, and she has been more than just a designer, she's been a coach. So Josh and I are DIYers. You can tell by all of our projects and the things that we've gone on and the things that we've done, we really do all of the work ourselves. We did manually install this garden 100% on our own. However, it was so helpful to have her draw up the design. We had a few conversations about what I was wanting to do, and my main goals being, yes, to have a lot of vegetables to grow for my family, but also to be a sanctuary and somewhere that I enjoy to go, that I can start moving a little bit slower in my day, because we run a couple businesses, we have 3 kids, we're busy, and it's almost like I want a time warp when I walk in here. Everything to just start going in slow motion. So she really understood that. She knew that this needed to be a little respite spot for me, and also still be productive. Okay, so that's how we should be living life, right? Be productive, but also be at rest. So this is something that she sketched out for me and we took and ran with, and I really appreciate it. And more than just designing it, she has become someone that I can text and say, okay, I've got a lot of green foliage, but not a lot of buds and blooms. What should I do? And she'll help me with that area also. So I encourage you, if you're new to gardening, maybe fast forward the same way and talk to a garden coach first, because there's still so much you're going to be doing on your own. You're going to be researching pests. You're going to be researching types to grow. If you want to start seeds, you're going to be doing that. You're going to be researching weed control. There's so much that you need to continue to focus on, and if it's not your full-time job and you have other things that you need to be doing, then I do encourage you to seek out someone who knows more than you do. So that is probably my best garden tip of the year. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to show you in another month or something a lot of harvesting.